Awesome. Awesome. Well, Anne, thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you for having me, David.
I met you on a rooftop for a LinkedIn event at ATD 2023 in San Diego, if memory serves. And I just thought you just gave off really good energy. And I was like, this is a human I want to keep in touch with. So I'm so, so grateful that you said yes to this opportunity. And something that I've started doing, rather than me telling people about how awesome you are, what you are, and speaking for you, I sort of want you to introduce yourself. I don't want to steal the thunder from you. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving a nutshell version of like how you keep busy, what do you do all day, your profession, that would be amazing.
All right, I'll give it my best shot. And before I do, I just want to say that I very much remember meeting you as well, and that you gave off great energy. I love how the spelling of your name gives you a good entree to conversation.
Mm-hmm.
As someone named Anne, I also have an entree to conversation because I don't know how often, but half the time I introduce myself as Anne, people always ask Anne with an E or Anne without an E.
Right.
I am Anne with an E. But if you are an Anne without an E, we can still be friends.
I love that. I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. And do people ever, you're ever spelling it, to customer service with the E and then they still get it wrong? Do you ever get that experience where you spell it literally letter by letter and they still get it wrong?
Everyone makes mistakes.
Yep.
I love that you are personally interested in making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We've all had those weird experiences at Starbucks where we think we say our name and it comes
Yes.
out some other way.
Yeah.
Someone on an international customer service call said, "Hello, is this Honey?" And they were looking
Okay.
at my name in the database of my
There we
help
go.
ticket or whatever, and
Yeah.
somehow ANNE was pronounced honey,
Yeah.
which, that's not bad.
No,
You can call me honey. Not everyone can call me honey,
that's
but
right.
if
That's right.
someone's
Not a,
helping me with my IT help ticket, they can call me honey.
There we
Uh,
go. That's amazing. And so tell me a little bit about, because letters are, in my estimation, a big part of your career and what what you do and how you kind of make a living. So give the listeners a little bit of a sense of how you keep it busy from the 9 to 5, so to speak.
Sure. By way of background, I'm a journalist. I came up in the world of magazines. Today, I work at LinkedIn and I create thought leadership and content that helps mostly a business audience think about upskilling and learning and development at their organizations. I represent our LinkedIn Learning product, which is online courses. And I just have a lot of fun. I get to work with data scientists and market researchers to diagnose the state of the industry.
Mm.
And of course, right now, everyone is very much focused on what transformation is AI going to bring to the world of work.
Absolutely. And I'm grateful because I get to bask in some of your awesome work. I'm a reader and an avid follower of the content that you and your team produce. And so I've had sort of firsthand witness to the caliber, right? It's always just thoughtful and amidst the memes of the world, right? The memes of social media. For me, it is actually a nice respite, a longer form journalism, if you will, where I can just take some time from my day and actually really, carve out those 15 minutes and read through the white paper or whatever it may be. So for me, I think of it as almost like meditative, right? Because it's a little bit of a longer piece usually.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's meant to be for those times when you can take a little break. It's not necessarily just a skim.
Right, right, right. Although LinkedIn is also pretty good on skimmable content, and I think you got to kind of know your audience too. And let's face it, all of our attention spans are kind of thinning out with every year. So I think LinkedIn does a good job of that as well. Um, I normally I try to actually my first question I missed it, but I'll ask it. What's been the best part of your day or week? However you want to answer that question. What's been the best part of your day or of your week so far?
Without a doubt, the best part of most of my weeks is when I play pickleball.
Okay, okay. That's a whole other podcast, but we have to talk a little bit about it. What about pickleball attracts you?
Okay. So, on a philosophical level,
Mhm.
I think that you and I are share a belief in a spirit of play, a
Mhm.
spirit of joy.
Yeah.
And pickleball is very trendy. It's this weird sport that kind of exploded as more baby boomers retired and
Mhm.
had time to play it. And then more of us discovered it during the pandemic. I actually started playing pickleball in high school because I
Oh,
grew up in the Pacific Northwest where it was invented. But then there wasn't much opportunity to play for like 2 decades. And so now that I've had a chance to rediscover it, I play every chance I have, every chance I have, basically. It's my number one piece of exercise. But
awesome.
it's some people call it mini tennis. I call it giant ping pong. Um,
Yeah,
the ball bounces in funny ways and makes everybody laugh. And most people I like to play with don't take it too seriously.
right.
And if you ever remember, I don't know if everyone has had this experience, but when I'm playing pickleball, especially like after dinner, the sun is setting, and it's kind of like being a kid again
Hmm.
when you're out playing with your friends, summer night, and for whatever reason, your parents aren't calling you in for your regular bedtime.
Wow.
And it's just like the day seems endless and it's pure fun.
That's amazing. I tried it only once a few weeks ago, and boy, oh boy, was it fun. I will definitely be trying it again because for me it can be as exerting as I want it to be, but for me I think it's just that social exercise that I crave. I'm a bit of a runner and a jogger, and that tends to be a more solo activity. Sometimes I'll run with friends, but a lot of times just the timing isn't right, and so I got to run alone. Whereas pickleball, I think by definition, you got to have, ideally, four people playing. So it's been fun, but I tried it once. So you are an early adopter. I mean, talk about, it's been decades since you've been in it. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's really, really cool. I was not expecting pickleball and philosophical in the same breath, and here we are talking about that. I love and play. I love that. I love that. Um, so let's talk about the genesis, not of pickleball for a moment, but the genesis of your entree into the career of words, into journalism. Like how did you get started? Maybe, your early gigs. Talk to me through that.
Sure. So I'm going way back, maybe those toddler days.
Yeah.
I always loved words and pictures.
Hmm.
In junior high, or what most people call middle school now, dear Mrs. Oldenkamp used to teach the words of the week, and she would give us words like perspicacious and sesquipedalian and ubiquitous. There'd usually be like 4 or 6 words of the week, and we had to write a story using them and then draw a
Mm,
picture to go with it. And I would spend like hours doing this assignment because I loved it so much. It's
awesome.
ridiculous. But it was a precursor to my work in magazines, where it's not just deep focus on how words come together to tell stories, but it's also about how those words live on a page
Mm,
together with photography and illustration and display copy that convinces you to dip in and read it. So that's the early genesis. I did go to college and study magazine publishing, and then was very lucky to work in it for several decades.
that's awesome. And how did you land at LinkedIn, right? Because LinkedIn is, I mean, I think it hit 1 billion users last year or thereabouts, and so obviously booming and growing. But you've been with LinkedIn for how long, and how did you land at LinkedIn?
Yeah, I've been a fan of LinkedIn very early on. I really am not an early adopter in most things, but
Hmm.
pickleball and LinkedIn,
There you go.
I was an early adopter. So, um, it's the first social media network that I joined back when social media was first exploding. And I just love the chance to connect with people, and some people call it networking. You can also call it schmoozing.
Hmm.
Um, and
Is
so
that what we did at the rooftop? We schmoozed?
we schmooze for sure. So I left my magazine world in 2019 and did a bit of consulting, and had some friends who worked at LinkedIn who brought me in to help with something called the LinkedIn Global Talent Trends Report.
Mhm.
So I did that on a freelance basis, and that led to some connections that allowed me to join LinkedIn. I jumped at the chance. LinkedIn is a company that does very well from a business perspective, but also believes in doing well in the world, which means we have a mission to expand economic opportunity for the global workforce. And I really see the leaders living that value every day. So it's wonderful to be a part of that.
That's awesome. And I don't know if I'm necessarily like an ultra early adopter of LinkedIn, but I've been on it for about 16 years, which is a lot of years, right? I mean, it's almost half my life, and it's been exciting to see my own journey. It really was just a static page at the beginning for me, like this is who I am and that's it. And then in recent years, I've realized it's a tool for my business, for branding, for connecting, for sort of word of mouth referrals. So it's definitely a tool that I use for business, but I also like to play. And the way I play on LinkedIn is I don't necessarily, take a picture of every donut I eat or whatever. Like I try to be better about eating too many donuts, but I try to, show a little bit of myself, because that's what works, and people crave that, and people want that authenticity, and that um they don't just want me to talk only about one thing all the time, at least not my clients, or my readers. So I have a lot of fun on LinkedIn, and when I got off of Instagram for 3 years, just because I kind of got addicted to it, it was awesome that eventually I went on LinkedIn, and I think I have a very healthy relationship with LinkedIn. I do go on it daily, but I learn from it. It is where I get a lot of my news, business and otherwise. It's where I mean, I am looking at other people in the space of coaching and personal and professional development. I learn from them through osmosis. So yeah, it ticks a lot of boxes for me, and it's fun.
I'm glad you find the fun in LinkedIn. I too use it to,
Yeah,
soak in the trends.
yeah.
Um, but I also believe that LinkedIn could use more fun. So
Mm,
bring the fun to LinkedIn. It should also be a place that helps us all with our what used to be more common of break room banter before there was more
mm.
remote and
Yeah,
hybrid work. So
I love that.
I'm constantly searching for the occasional fun post to
I
bring to
wonder.
LinkedIn.
That makes me think. I wonder if there's got to be a pickleball group, a pickleball, addicts group on LinkedIn. If not, we should start one. So
For sure.
yeah.
Yes. More pickleball, more fun on LinkedIn.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Another big question that I ask sometimes in my coaching calls, because I really kind of like to get a peek into people's brains and how they prioritize and value things. So if I were to ask you kind of to take a look back at everything you've done, academic, extracurricular, and career, right, up until this morning, what would you say? What are you most proud of so far?
Well, again, I'm going to go a little philosophical because I'm I'm kind of proud that I exceeded my own career expectations.
Ooh.
And I come from very humble background. My mom was a classroom teacher. My dad had to retire halfway through his career due to disability. And they had a very relaxed sensibility. Um, Fun little anecdote. The first time I got all A's on my report card in junior high, they sat me down and said, "You really don't need to work this hard."
Wow. So how did that land with you? Do you remember what you thought when they said that?
Oh, I thought it was great fodder for satire. In fact, I one of my first satirical creative writing pieces was about my parents not wanting me to spend as much time on my homework,
That's
which was a
amazing.
very different experience than what most of my peers
Yes.
we're having. So,
Yeah.
but to get back to your question, the philosophical part is that I think for a lot of people, a lot of women in particular, and I actually credit Sheryl Sandberg for bringing this to my mindfulness, is like,
Hmm.
we don't necessarily have expansive enough imaginations to know where we can go in life. We don't necessarily have role models
Yeah.
who've blazed the trails to show how it's possible. So, I knew I always wanted to work with words, ideally magazines, but I kind of pictured myself like noodling around on some newsletters. And I did not picture myself as editor-in-chief and publisher of a magazine with 5 million readers. And that's where I eventually got in the world of magazines. We ended up winning several prizes from an organization called Lowell Thomas for travel writing. And
Awesome.
yeah, that's what I'm most proud of. But perhaps
That's
there's even
yeah.
more to come.
There's more to come. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the word satire, and when you said that, what fired in the neurons that fired in my brain, I'm thinking, kind of like the Onion, right? But does LinkedIn have, or should we start like a satire where LinkedIn makes fun of itself? Because I think that is play. That shows that you're confident and competent and you're secure and you've made it when you can laugh at yourself. Like some of the best comedians make fun of themselves, and that just makes us more attracted to them. So, is there an like Onion-esque satire on LinkedIn? And if so, why don't we start one?
Brilliant idea. After this conversation, I'm going to see if The Onion has a presence on LinkedIn. If not, there should be an Onion LinkedIn partnership for sure.
I think so. I think so. At the end of the day, work can be playful. Work can also sometimes we take ourselves way too seriously at work, and that can, there are times when gravitas is important, but then there are times when it can actually exacerbate burnout. And I see that, my clients taking themselves too seriously spills over into other aspects of their lives, whereas the same clients in a different environment or like a more playful environment, or the same clients with a more playful attitude and mindset can be less stressed, can be more healthful, can be more mindful across all aspects of their lives. So anyhow, that's a story for another day. But I'm so glad that you were receptive to at least the brainstorming there. So I mean, this may not ring any bells, but I'd like to ask this question. So do you ever face any misconceptions or myths, or people don't really understand what you do? They have these weird assumptions and are incorrect about kind of what you do every day, whether it's friends, family, or strangers?
When we talk about myth and misconceptions, the thing that's top of mind for me right now is not so much those two words as just another M word, the
Mm,
murkiness
mm.
that surrounds AI and
Yeah,
how AI is going to affect the craft of words and content. Um, AI is going to affect the whole world. But
yeah, yeah.
right now, there are some very immediate effects going on for people who are wordsmiths like myself. And it's been such an interesting journey and roller coaster ride when we first started learning about Chat GPT and see that it can do what writers do. And then kind of coming to the realization that it's just churning out new uh, reconfigurations of words that already exist, and it actually ends up being a lot of fluff, right?
Hmm.
So there's still a role for people who can create net new stories, net new ideas in the world. But I think that there's going to be a lot more fluff
Yeah,
in the world very, very soon.
yeah.
And that there may be a real split between folks who understand the value that humans bring to communication versus those that are all about scaling up the fluff.
Mm, yeah, because mediocrity does sell, actually. There are plenty of people that will shell out money for mediocrity, and if you can expand that and scale that, you stand to make money. It's not how I do business. I'm very much like intimate, one-on-one, high caliber. That's me. But then again, I'm not in charge of a multi-billion-dollar business, right? So it is very interesting. And speaking of errors, right? Because I think you kind of alluded to this. Uh, Many people who know me know that because my name is spelled with a W, it looks like a David with either two V's or a W instead of a V. So it's always just this point of like, hey, your name is mistyped. You mistyped your own name. I'm like, thank you so much, but I didn't. That is my name. Um, but speaking of errors, I actually see AI committing few but very egregious errors, and it's kind of fun to point them out back at AI. I don't know. Have you had any experiences where AI just said stuff that was weird, off-putting, factually incorrect, or just downright silly? Have you had any of those types of interactions with AI?
Yeah, absolutely. The technical term I believe is hallucinations,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So I have a good friend who's written several books and writes a lot about his family, and it made up like a whole extra child for him.
wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, I find it's a useful tool. I've used it for a year now in terms of content, editing down maybe a little bit, image generation, but actually I'm a writer and a photographer, so I prefer my own style. Whether someone likes it or not is immaterial. Like I think this is me when I write it. Sometimes I'll put it into Claude or ChatGPT, just like, hey, any tips. But by and large, it says, hey, like given that this is your objective, you have met the objective. You might want to change X or Y. Sometimes its recommendation for why I should change X are not aligned with my values. And I'm like, I appreciate you, but nah, I'm gonna go with my own way. So it's a useful tool, but it might augment or support, but it doesn't really change. Like if I'm putting content out, like a few paragraphs, I'd say that 90% of it is almost verbatim how I've written it originally. And I'm sticking to that for now. Who knows what the next iteration of AI will do, but for now that's my plan. What about you? How do you use AI to kind of support your day to day?
Yeah, it's great for generating ideas. It's like an automatic brainstorming a machine
Awesome.
for coming up with headlines. And then you can still like build your own ideas on top of it.
Yeah.
Also, I'm very bullish at what AI tools can do with original thought leadership. I can create an original blog or an original report, and then use a tool that can take that blog or report and turn it into social media posts, um, advertisements that we want to use to get the word out on it. And they still benefit from human review,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
but you can press a button and
Yeah.
create a whole bunch of extra assets to go
Yeah.
with your thought leadership.
Absolutely. And I've heard people on LinkedIn say, because now it's embedded in the LinkedIn platform for most, if not all people. I've seen people use that or share their experiences with it, and it's been mostly good, right? I mean, there are always, let's be honest, people are most vocal about the outlier experiences, but I'm getting the sense that most people kind of have said, all right, this is the new normal, and rather than trying to resist it, let me go ahead and try to leverage it, because it's not necessarily AI that will take my job. It's the people who know how to leverage AI that will take my job, right?
Yes, for sure.
So you talked a little bit about, kind of like me. I think you and I both are wordsmith nerds, or at least I am, and I'm proud of it. But given that so much of your work is about the written word, um, if I asked you, kind of what's the most fulfilling piece about your job right now, as it stands, your current job role, as it stands now, what's the most rewarding or the most fulfilling at the end of the day or on a Friday night?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a word nerd. I'm right there with you. I still enjoy all the skills that fall into the category of journalism.
Mm,
Gathering information, synthesizing information, and then turning that information into net new
mm,
thinking and storytelling.
yeah,
I also just really enjoy the art of crafting individual sentences, putting them together.
yeah,
That sort of think time alone with my computer is really wonderful. And editing is extra fun too, when I worked in magazines, my job had evolved to where I was really much more focused on business and people management,
Right.
and I had other people who really excelled at the editing piece, but I would still bring little editing pieces home with me and basically do it in my off work time because
Yes.
it's like doing crossword puzzles. I love it.
Yes, exactly, right? Like I don't know if you've seen, but this is the New York Times mug. So, um, and what about the not the shadow side, but the tough side? Like what are kind of challenges or what's the difficult part of what you do these days? Big picture or minuscule, however you want to answer that.
Well, working at LinkedIn is an amazing experience because it's a global company
Yeah.
filled with brilliant people. And I think all of us who work at LinkedIn have a bit of a challenge in that there are so many people we can collaborate with and so
Mm.
many people who can take an idea and make it better. But so how do you find the right
Oh,
number of
wow.
people to
That's
collaborate
an
with without,
interesting, yeah.
spending more time than you really need?
That is a problem. I don't know if I've ever heard that problem voiced or articulated or even thought about that, right? Where it's not about a dearth of talent. It's not about a lack of creativity. It's like, no, there's such a selection of awesome brains and brain power, and sifting through that can be challenging. That is okay. I'll have to sit on that one. I like that one. Um, so I mean, I guess, well, first of all, thank you. I just really wanted to learn a little bit more about you because as fun as the rooftop was last year, it was loud and there was just so much commotion and so much going on. We had that magician, right, who was doing all sorts of crazy things with people's phones, and it was a riot. But I didn't have as much time to kind of get to know a little bit about you, and so I really cherish this opportunity. Is there anything else that you want to share, whether it's about pickleball or working at LinkedIn or anything else that you care to share as someone who spent so many wonderful years focusing on the written word?
Well, I don't know how much time we have left, but I could recommend some books.
Please throw some
Okay.
my way. I mean,
Okay.
I'm just selfish as well. I might read some of them as well.
Okay. So actually, before books, I'm going to recommend a documentary, and this is
Okay.
for the word nerds of the world. There's a documentary that I found on Amazon Prime. It's called Turn Every Page. I've actually seen it 3 times now.
Okay.
It's about two Bobs. It's about Bob Caro, who's a prolific nonfiction writer and former journalist, and Bob Gottlieb. Bob Gottlieb was an editor, a book editor at Knopf, and recently passed away, but he edited some of the most significant books of the 20th century,
Mm,
including all of Toni Morrison's work, Catch 22,
wow.
and it was like deep, deep
Yeah.
library of classic books. And so they started collaborating on this book. Let's see, I have it here called The Power Broker. I like
Okay.
big books, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's about Robert Moses,
Okay.
who was a politician in the 20th century who
Hmm.
reshaped New York.
That's right.
Um, and it's all about these two gentlemen and their deep, deep craft and respect for words. And it really touches like me at my soul. And gosh,
That's
I would have
amazing.
loved to work with either
Yeah.
of them when I was
That's
coming up,
amazing.
but I came up just a little later.
Yeah. That's amazing. Amazing. Any thoughts? And this is just this is just like where my brain is going right now. Any thoughts about kind of with working with the next generation, right? So some of the people that are coming up now, they're used to autocorrect, like they're used to, they're digitally native, digitally first, whatever the phrase of the day is, right? The phrase du jour is. Any thoughts on working with and whether working with them as partners in the office or sort of um, tailoring content to the next generation. I mean, I'm sure that you and your team have had to have these conversations in some form, right? So, any thoughts on that and how to navigate those challenges of intergenerational communication?
It's not an easy one. I am very lucky to have a 17-year-old in my own house. So I have
Perfect.
daily interaction with the
Awesome.
TikTok generation.
Yeah. Awesome. That's your research right there.
Yeah, the New York Times has a great article today about how TikTok is reshaping content and reshaping the world, and
Hmm.
it's video and it's short, and
Yeah.
that's the future of communication right there.
That is you're so right, right? It is simple. It's not necessarily easy. For some of my clients, they're used to, again, the longer form, the more sort of formal type of communication. And when their businesses are starting to not necessarily fail, but feel the pressure, they start to realize you got to adapt. You don't necessarily have to lose yourself and become someone completely different, but the formats and the way and the channels, adapt or perish, right? Is kind of the extreme. In my own work, I've realized, even though I tend to be long-winded and I tend to have a lot to say and I tend to be deeply passionate about random things, it's great for me, but it's very selfish because most people, even if they're interested in it, are either on the subway or driving to work or in between meetings. They don't have the time, or they don't choose not to take the time to read my long expletive, not expletive filled, but like long, really thoughtful, really raw piece. I have to learn, like, how do I convert that into something that is short and maybe a 30-second video or a short piece of text with a photo. That's my challenge, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, actually.
That's cool. And I think we both agree there's still a place for those long form pieces
Yes.
that
It.
help you think deeply
Mm-hmm.
about
Yes.
important things.
It's like, I was chatting with a client the other day. It's sort of like you want 80% of your meal or of your diet to be nutritious, nutrient dense, healthy food, and then you got to make room for some fun in your life and have some more of that, maybe a little bit of that junk food. But if your entire diet of media is just the listicles and the top 10 things, or just memes, I think we do suffer as a society for it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. For me, the core, the foundation is just always going to be the longer form, until AI just starts blocking that type of content, a year from now, which hopefully doesn't happen. But it is absolutely how I like to both give and receive information.
I love
So,
it.
any final thoughts before I let you go? Because I know that you're a busy human being. So, any final thoughts or comments before we part ways for the day?
Well, I love that you're deeply passionate about random things and that you let me talk about pickleball, which I'm
Yes.
deeply passionate about. What's a random thing that you're deeply passionate about?
Well, other than crosswords, well, actually, why don't I just talk about that very briefly? So I'm in touch with somebody who's built a lot of crosswords, and I think has had a few published in the New York Times, because that is a goal of mine. One day, whether it's a month from now or 20 years from now, I would love to have even a Monday puzzle, which, for those who may not be familiar, Mondays tend to be the easier puzzles, and it gets progressively harder with the day until Saturday. Sunday is the bigger puzzle, but it's actually a little bit easier. So I would love to even just have a Monday puzzle published in the New York Times. So something that I create. So I consider myself a crucive verbalist, which is a crossword. I don't know if it's a crossword aficionado, a crossword writer, a crossword filler outer. I don't know, but it's somebody who loves and is passionate about crosswords. So that's something that came top of mind.
Oh, I hope you achieve your goal.
Thank you, thank
And if
you.
not that, maybe someday your name will be the answer to a crossword clue.
Ooh, that would be great. So I'll start, once we get off. I'll start to think about what could that clue be, right? What is that? What is my legacy going to be? What am I going to work on from now until the next 20 years that could be worthy of a New York Times clue? That's a really, really awesome thought. Thank you for that. Well, Anne, with an E, uh, I really appreciate you, and so grateful that we met. A year ago. It's almost, well, 11 months ago. But just like I said, the energy and the thoughtfulness and the kindness really resonated with me, and I was like, this is somebody I want to keep on my radar. So thank you so much for today, and I appreciate you, and I'll be in touch.
Right back at you. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Take good care.
You
Bye
too.
bye.
Bye bye.